when the Indians started coming together, that is when the unity started in India and the national movement started, people started becoming more patriotic in the nature. That is the time that designing the national dress was also one of the main agenda before the people of India, because this gave them a feeling that now they are different Indians, a set of people who were different from the Britishers, and they wanted to show this to the Britishers. They wanted to respect their Indianness. They wanted to have that feeling that whatever their dress code is, that is different, and thus the Britishers must realize that Indians are one identity. But here, when the designing of the national dress started, there were a lot of debates. There were artists, poets who started making the national dress in their own way. There were different images, there were different ideas of different people, and there were long debates on what should be the national dress of India. Well, because the national dress of India had to be such that it would be a cultural identity symbol. So, that particular thing which would become symbolic of the cultural identity of India had to be designed, which was not easy. Well, Rabindranath Tagore, the family of Rabindranath Tagore, they started thinking about making the national dress of India. And while doing so, they disagreed to the idea that it should be the mixture of the British and the Indian attire, because certain people had suggested that we should pick up certain elements from the British dress and certain from the Indian dress and make a national dress for the Indians. But he put forward an idea that the national dress of India should be a mixture of Hindu style of wearing and the Muslim style of wearing. And thus he proposed the Chapkan style of wearing, wherein both the ingredients of the Indian style and the Western style were taken into accordance. Well, Gyanandani Devi, who was the wife of Satyendra Nath Tagore, who was the first Indian to qualify the Indian Civil Service examination, started wearing the Parsi style of saree. And this Parsi style of wearing saree later on was called as the Brahmika style of wearing the saree. This started becoming popular in certain states of India, and the Parsi style of wearing the saree was picked up by many Indian women. But this pan-Indian style still could not be taken up by many women of the Indian states. They were not comfortable with the Parsi style of wearing the saree, and they had their own style of wearing saree according to the state in which they lived. As you must have observed even now, that if you go to different states of India, people wear the saree in a different style. And thus, coming to designing the national dress of India was not at all easy, because there were supporters and there were opposition, and it was to be discussed whether the Indian style purely is to be picked up or whether we are going to include the Western style of dressing up, and thus no conclusion as such could be picked up. But there were many people who even started opposing the idea of designing the national dress, and for them Picking up a new national dress was not at all required because whatever existed was in itself a mark of Indian cultural identity. Thus, the debate continued, and the poets and the artists and the simple people and the rich people and the poor people, they kept on arguing about the design of the national dress of India.